Good morning, survivors. I hope your week...
Oh, can I do the opening bit? Oh, I want to give it a try.
You realize you have, like, when you were trying to reach out to me in our queue, right?
Yeah, but that was so professional and boring. And now that you know I'm not here for nefarious reasons, I thought it'd be fun to do my own thing.
You know what? Go for it. Have fun.
Yes! Welcome back, survivors, to your favorite weekly show. This is the Survivorist Power Hour.
The Survivorist.
That's right! And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Royal Meal Drop. Every week, you get your Royal Crown approved meal. Save yourself time and money. And also just get rid of your taste buds. And pray you have a strong stomach. But that's how you know it's a true MRE. It's not just any meal, it's Royal Meal. I'm your announcer, Lancelot, and now your host who survived the most, Gabriel Blythe!
Thank you? Are we one of those alpha male podcasts?
Oh, ew, king and country, no. We talk about toxic positivity. We only support and praise. We lift each other up no matter what. Respect women. You can't get gains unless you ask for help.
I have no idea how to move on from whatever this is.
Yes, and, Gabe? Yes, and?
And I thank you, Lancelot, for that wonderful opening. I have a guest.
A guest, you say?
Yeah, a guest. It's someone who's going to tell them about their life and build up your positivity. Really,
Positivity.
tell us how we can support others.
Support!
Welcome to the show, Lancelot!
I am so shocked. I never saw this coming.
I like to keep the show a true mystery.
Thank you for entertaining me.
You know, it's kind of refreshing to be silly with someone else.
Oh, our Q doesn't have a preposterous side?
I'm sure she does, hidden below all those layers of shadow and edge.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad I can be your nonsensical cohort. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Who says there was a topic?
Something along the lines of, "Hey, Lancelot, we have some really great stories. Would you want to join me for tomorrow's podcast?"
Now who's failing at yes-anding?
Shoot. Gaheris has influenced me with her duty-bound ways.
Why is she so...
Responsible, devoted, steadfast.
strict?
That too. Not my story to tell. I know. But she still deserves to say her side of things if she were so inclined.
What about your side?
Well, what do you want to know? More stories about the time I prevented a building fire from taking dozens of lives? Or the story about the brothel I found above a prime minister's home and they had no idea?
Was it Canada's PM? Tell me it was Canada.
You would think. But no.
That story might be a little too mature for my general audience vibe I go for.
You're right. That's for the late night version of Survivorals.
Survivorist. You already forgot.
I did. Such a better name, too. Can't believe I forgot.
How about the story of how you became a knight?
It's a story.
If it's too personal, I understand. It's just...
Just what?
Well, in my experience, and RQ has sort of reaffirmed it, that one doesn't just work for the job. Just a lot of who your father is or was.
You know, there were a few knights who had their seat due to such nepotism. But my story just requires some context.
I think context would be appreciated. Build up the trust that you're a human, just like the rest of us.
I would like to.
If it's too personal, I don't want to...
No. Just There are things I can say and things I can't say. Some things you won't understand and some things you won't be able to truly perceive.
How so? Like, is it royal secrets?
To a degree. How about I just start, and if you get confused, just chime in.
I can do that.
Wonderful. The context begins with a war. Some of the territories wanted to secede, and there were a lot of reasons why. But mainly they wanted to treat some humans as less than equal. Dreadful business, really. And I wanted to do my part. But the crown, at the time, didn't want me.
How so?
Well, they wanted a very young man to enlist, and I...
Oh, so this was before your transition. If that's too much to talk about, like...
I want to tell you the story. I'm not always excited to talk about the time when my family thought I should be someone I wasn't. And the time where I thought they were right, and I pushed my truest self down. Despite the hurt. As if their happiness was ever worth more than mine. Denying the voice of who I was and the voice saying I deserved to be happy, it caused a lot of internal conflict. Trauma. Plain and simple. In some ways, I think that voice was one of the reasons I wanted to join the war effort. Because I could be that person I wanted to be and be a true productive citizen. I could do both. I won't recant the story of how I snuck in, but just know I convinced the crown that I was one Alexander and nothing else. I sometimes recall that time and think whether or not they knew and were just desperate. I know I'm not the only one to wear a binder and drop my voice, regardless of their knowledge or willingness to believe me. I was enlisted. I went through basic, which was supposed to be several months, but again, due to their need, the crown deemed my 3 weeks of training to be more than sufficient.
Did you feel like it was?
I could have spent a lifetime preparing for it, but no one can tell you that the worst of it won't be killing other humans. It's living with yourself. Alone, surrounded by other young men who are in the same mental war with themselves. Feeling like no one will understand. No one can see these scars on your mind. But that's not what you were asking. Did I feel like I could carry a gun and shoot it efficiently? Barely. I wasn't confident in my ability. None of us were. I thought I would see too much violence. I got called to be a member of the supply team. I would only briefly see the front lines and drop off ammo and food and bring back the wounded. I told you the story of how one of our supply runs got ambushed by some villagers. They thought we were the enemy and we convinced them to join us. It felt like a cheat. I wasn't really helping. I wasn't doing my part. But that notion quickly vanished when I saw some of the men we brought back from the front lines. I refuse to bring that imagery to your mind, but you've seen the images in your textbooks, I'm sure. After a few months of back and forths, there was a mix-up. Some sergeant or general, it's been so long I can't truly recall, said I was the supply, an extra body to be thrown in the trenches.
But you weren't assigned to the front.
This man did not care. He needed the numbers to maintain that line, and he would face every court-martial to keep it. So there I was, now in the trenches. Fresh face and clothes, not covered in dirt nor blood. Clearly, I stuck out, and not many of the men were happy to have me there. They thought their sacrifice was more, and that by me being there would lessen that work. Everyone shared that feeling. At times, even myself. Except for George. He was constantly smoking. I think he smoked in his sleep. When we got sleep. He looked at me, slapped my face leaving mud, and said with a cigarette between his lips, "Now you're one of us." He became my best friend. We did everything together. Ate together, reload together, got trench foot together, everything. We were in that trench for 2.5 months. Usually there would be a small tete-a-tete, few shots from one side, then a reply from the other, until the enemy decided they were going to advance. They knew we had not received our month's supply, so they took the initiative and pressed the advantage. What they didn't know was that when George didn't have his smokes, he became awfully disgruntled. And when he was truly mad, he was a better shot. He had motivation. And I loved that about him. How he was more for the cause because it meant he could get back to his everyday. Usually most of the rest of the men didn't share that compulsion, and we couldn't hold the line. George, however, refused to let it go. He and I held that line for 3 days. No food, no sleep, and no bloody smokes. Sorry, I know you're not a fan of cursing, but that's what he kept muttering between shots. No food, bang. No sleep, bang. No bloody smokes, bang, bang, bang. But his drive and my ability to reload quickly couldn't stop the enemy forever. We had a weak 9 o'clock, and George was bayoneted in the side. I was able to hold them off, but George wasn't gonna make it. There were probably 5 of us left holding that line. And if we stayed there, that wound would have infected wounds almost immediately. So I did the most rational thing I could do. I took my shirt, bandaged him, and carried him out of the trench, not realizing I exposed my secret. We retreated. George on my shoulder, and the other 3 trying to cover us so we wouldn't become prisoners or worse. I don't remember how long we ran. I just remember seeing one of my old cargo caravans and collapsing on the spot. I think I woke up about 38 hours later. I was alone and cuffed to my cot, so I knew I was done. I would be sent home or possibly arrested, but that wasn't my main concern. I wanted to make sure George was okay. I called out, asked if he was okay, and a military policeman said to shut up and be grateful I have friends in high places. And I sat there for 2 more days, not knowing what that meant or if my friend was alive or dead, until I was escorted from that campsite to another caravan without a word. In that caravan, we traveled for several hours, stopped in what felt like the middle of nowhere. And that's saying something after all the time we spent in nowhere. Brought a tent that looked cleaner and grander than even my own home. I was left inside alone, and it was beautiful. Carpeted floors, a warm fireplace, tables with maps and charts, tray full of spirits. And in limps George, a bandage around his stomach and a cane at his side. I was surprised and he was grateful to see me, but was mad I was lying to him about who I was. I told him I wasn't lying. I was just trying to be my truest self. And in walked in a very old man. Someone who looked like they were ready to keel over any moment. Turned out to be George's grandfather, with a few greats before that. Are you still here with me?
Yeah, who was his grandfather? Some colonel in the Royal Army, I imagine?
You are closer than you think. Just the admiral in the Royal Navy, general in the Army, and Air Chief Marshal.
The king?
The king himself. And I had saved his grandson. Obviously, everyone was very cross that I had snuck in, but George vouched for me. Said I served my country more than most, which was silly of him to say. He did most of the work. I just reloaded his gun. But the king himself said I was due more than I could imagine just for saving George. According to protocol, since I saved one of the royal bloodline, I should have been promoted to the highest rank possible. But that wasn't an option. I was less than, due to my sex. But George refused to see that any gender would be considered less than, and after several hours of yelling that I sat silently for, they decided that I would be inducted to the most elite, where no gender or sex was ever part of their guidelines. And 3 weeks later, I took my oath as the 10th chair of the Knights of the Round Table.
So, you were a Lancelot then?
No, not yet. Lancelot is as much of a title as it is a rank. I was Gaheris then. There was an opening. Not the lowest rank, but nowhere close to Lancelot. But I worked my way up to here. Lancelot, blessed with the sword of the Lady of the Lake, and who drinketh of the cup, second only to the king himself. Long may he reign.
So, no nepotism. No royal connection whatsoever. Just right place, right time.
If you call the trenches the right place, then sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be dismissive.
Oh, of course not.
Thank you for sharing that story. The war alone sounds awful enough that I could understand not wanting to retell that story, but for it to be so connected to an identity you felt you needed to suppress and hide, I can't even imagine.
It was nice being able to tell the story. Thank you for listening. I look forward to coming back on your broadcast and to tell more stories.
I'm curious about Gaheris's now.
Oh, won't be easy. But I'll see what I can do to help. I think I'm going to go if you don't mind. Clear my mind a bit.
Oh, of course. I'll wrap up here. Well, survivors, that was one hell of a story. I don't know why I would be confused or unable to understand parts of it, but it all seemed pretty straightforward. Harrowing, but clear. If you want to hear more of Lancelot's great stories and in person, come find us. We're at the usual spot, the usual time of the day. We're going to be here. And, you just don't have to do it alone. Lancelot wasn't alone. Through all of that, he had someone. So you don't have to be alone. Stay safe, survivor.